Hey there, welcome to episode 136 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I'm your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo, recording this at 10:51 p.m. Pacific Time in Vegas, of course, on Monday, September 22nd, 2025, to be published, as usual, on Tuesday, in this case, the 23rd of September, also in 2025. So I'm starting to, and I will forget occasionally, I'm trying to now include the time zone, just in case someone hears this from far away. And so just so you know when it was recorded. Today's title and topic, by the way, Federation. I don't know if you happen to notice the cover art, a lot of artificial intelligence, generative AI, which is ridiculous. I wish I had more aesthetic, artistic, and creativity skills. It kind of did what I wanted. I was making a play on the Federation, but we're not talking about Star Trek just yet. If you are new to the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, or if you don't know what the Innovate for Vegas Foundation is, let me tackle both as briefly as possible. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation is a Nevada nonprofit corporation formed in June of 2022. We are a 501c3 public charity. And our purpose, our on file, our written purpose, to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. Fairly generic, because innovation can take many forms. It doesn't really depend on code, although it might include code. That was our big goal, is to make sure that we're not pushing people away for not being coders. But as it happens, today's episode will be a lot of code-related discussion. Not actual code, but the Federation I'm talking about does involve, or at least get started with, some software development, such as life. Not everything is code, I promise. So the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, all that. The Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program is a weekly audio program about our initiatives, our goals, our tools and methods, our progress sometimes, our quest for board members, our fundraising activities, where we spend the money. Those are just a few of the topics off the top of my head. So give a listen. And we are available in more places now. So hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description. And so wherever you found this program, could be more places. The episode description contains the show notes, including the summary, which I will read to you. It is 2 sentences. Yeah. There are fewer links moving forward to keep it tight. The other links can always be found on our website. I think that's true. If not, I will add them as soon as I finish with this recording. If you've heard previous episodes, you'll know that there were 4 usual links every week. I've cut that down to 2, and then there are 2 links for today's episode. Total of 4. Could have been 6. Only 4. On that note, let us begin. Summary for today's episode. Federation is all the rage, helping individuals and cohorts to connect across different types of technology platforms using open protocols and tools to decentralize participation and access. It is something we are leaning into heavily for our smart city efforts. And so the links for today's episode, the usual 2 now: Innovate for Vegas activity, the activity of our cohort, our various initiatives and other ongoing actual hands-on stuff. innovateforvegas.org. That's innovate, F-O-R, Vegas, no spaces or other punctuation, and then a period, and then O-R-G. So that was our all-inclusive main website, but now it is focused more on the doing of stuff, the actual civic volunteerism, and where we're trying to go with it. And then our other website, Innovate for Vegas Foundation, is kind of the business side. As I mentioned, we are a Nevada nonprofit corporation. We have a business ID. We file a 990 tax return. We file an annual list update with the Nevada Secretary of State. The tax return goes to the IRS, the 990. So yeah, we're like a real business with real paperwork and board members, hopefully. So that is Innovate for Vegas, same deal, Innovate FOR Vegas, and then a period, and then Foundation helps to keep it clear. Business, as the saying goes, business in the front, activity in the back. So innovateforvegas.org is probably the more interesting if you are looking to become involved in community elevation or civic volunteerism in general. If you're interested in a nonprofit, especially if you're in the Vegas area and you're curious about the business side of things, innovateforvegas.foundation. For today's episode, 2 Wikipedia links. The first is to the general notion of federation. So it's the Wikipedia page for federation. Federation typically applies to government organization, government structure. So federal government has multiple independent entities that are part of it, right? The U.S. is a federal government with individual states with their own government and so on. The Fediverse is a communication federation. The Fediverse is made up of different kinds of platforms owned by different people, run by different people, but they can all interoperate. So they all kind of work together like one big entity, which is now basically known as the Fediverse. So if you follow the rules, so to speak, if you use the protocols and the open standards and the data structures, you can pretty much communicate between different platforms, even though they are not the same. So this means that you no longer have to, you got to be on platform whatever. I was almost going to say platform X, but that's not generic anymore. So federation and the Fediverse. So what does that mean for us? Let's start with the old ways. It is no secret big corporations own social media. Individuals and groups have come to rely on platforms such as Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram and Twitter, which is now X, TikTok, more recently Blue Sky, probably others. Since there is a profit motive to keep users of each platform engaged on the particular platform in question, by design, these older, larger platforms can make it difficult to communicate between them and can sometimes make it difficult to use each platform in the way one might like to, often based on monetization constraints and business dealings. The adpocalypse on YouTube, you're allowed to say this but not that on Facebook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are mostly about servicing commercial interests, the way the platform makes money. So the advertisers and so on. We're not going to spend too much time on this, don't worry. Some enable cross-posting of content, especially if they rely on standard web links for things. Facebook famously introduced the Open Graph protocol so that you could post a link on your wall, which is now, I think, just your news feed. And the Facebook server, or maybe the Facebook client, I think it was probably the client, would go and follow that URL and visit the website and pull the description and an image and the official URL and the title. And it would create a post for you on the Facebook newsfeed, the stream, the wall, take your pick. So Facebook actually contributed to that process with some open standards called Open Graph. So, okay, nice. But not every website or platform does that. Instagram famously kind of doesn't really work well with URLs that make the internet work, the web work. So it depends, and sometimes if you follow a link that lands you on Instagram or Twitter, you're not logged in, right? So every platform has its little nuances because they really want to keep people on their platforms. Not to mention the so-called algorithms, which determine how a consumer of services of each of these various platforms is presented with information. The subject of global negotiation, in at least one case concerning this intellectual property, is making all the news, especially if you are using TikTok. Indeed. And that becomes particularly tricky when it's news. If you're interested in clothing or sightseeing or foodie pics, the algorithm might be more interesting. But if people are using these platforms for news or to find out information about what's going on around them, then it can become a little interesting. So let's talk scope and scale. The goal of a for-profit business entity is to serve its shareholders, private or otherwise. So that is the company could be private or public. It's still a company that is owned by its shareholders. Occasionally there will be a public-private confusion about censorship and other such things. But either way, it's a company, and it is beholden to its shareholders or stakeholders, if you prefer. It's fiduciary responsibility according to the law in the U.S., so they cannot be faulted too much for doing just that. They're supposed to make money. They answer to their shareholders. As often as this makes people upset, That is sort of the way. This does mean that capturing more users of their services and then feeding its users with like and view counts and whatnot to keep them happy is the goal is to maximize returns with quality of service either tied for first or maybe not. Quality of service to the customer. That's us, the users. We are not here to rip on these companies so much. They have their thing. They can, and they certainly have captured the public consciousness, for better or worse. So we're not really, we're not competing directly. Although what we would like to accomplish might be similar, but this is not about audience capture. This is about elevating smarter, smart cities. These platforms tend to be global, that they want users from all over the world to use them, and they would almost certainly be happy if those users only use their platforms all the time, not leaving to try out other platforms or leaving at all. Sounds like a casino, am I right? Oh, Vegas casinos don't want you to leave. Okay, let's stay on topic. I have been heard to say this before. When any business entity is focused on acquiring all of the users, they're less likely to be focused on any of the users. In other words, if the scope and scale of any platform is intended to be global, attention paid to the needs and experience of individual and local users for any locality, neighborhoods and localities in general may not be the highest concern. It's profit. And then we'll worry about those people in Pacoima. That was a Speed reference. This is where a cohort that is focused on locality, its own locality most likely, or maybe local thinking in general, can fill in some of the gap by remaining focused on how tools are used and how they benefit locally, sometimes among people they themselves run into, or maybe they are those people themselves. The scale and scope can remain small or smaller, and attention to particular usage scenarios can be transformed into actual implementation, and other localities can benefit from these adaptations directly or by adapting them for themselves. In other words, once you have an open system, one person in Greater Vegas may say, well, here, this works here in Vegas, and somebody else in Pacoima might say, oh, we could use that, but if we need to change the way it works here because it's not the same as in Vegas. Okay, that would be encouraged. No, you must use our platform exactly as it is and pay us for the blue check mark. None of that. None of that. So we started off with MyMuni. Actually, we started off with MyVegas. MyMuni Initiative, formerly MyVegas Initiative, is aimed at building an information sharing platform that is focused on locality first. My municipality or my community is what MyMuni stands for. Take your pick. We changed from MyVegas because what we want to build is something that is not exclusively useful in Vegas, but which we can deploy and use in Vegas and wherever else anyone else might want to, especially if somebody from Pacoima would like to contribute to the project. It should be usable in their city. They shouldn't have to be using something called MyVegas when they are somewhere else. The basic idea is to develop a purpose-built platform aimed at locality, sharing a variety of information types in useful ways, moving away from the inverted pyramid first structure we find in traditional blogging and news reporting platforms, though still enabling a news feed or news wall or article format as options. Maps, timelines, network diagrams, and all matter of modern tools and methods and visualizations and so on can be added to the mix. On top of the use of structured data with schema for these, a thing that has been around for decades. Why are we not using it? It's called the semantic web. Look it up. It's actually still being used today. It didn't disappear. There is already a federation scheme, not schema, federation scheme built on open data formats and protocols and with a variety of working platforms already operating in the so-called Fediverse, which we intend to interoperate with, of course, so that more information can be shared more easily without platform silos, without relying on who is signed in, who is following whom, and so on. A platform built for people in municipalities, that's towns and cities, and or communities, that's neighborhoods or virtual cohorts. So basically MyMuni, municipalities, communities, Muni, enabling them to connect, communicate, and collaborate. What could be worse? Now, how can we go wrong by being open and enabling all of these things? That's the goal. Welcome. There is a flip side to this poker chip. We called it Welcome to go with MyVegas. You know the sign I'm talking about. And it remains named that. aimed at visitors to a locality. It can be any locality rather than those who actually reside there. In other words, where there is one variation of this notion that would be designed for ongoing engagement around particular locations, you're a Vegas local, so you would use the MyMuni side of the poker chip. Particular issues, particular events, the presumption of the welcome variation is that one would have a different focus, a different level of familiarity, and a variety of different types of ongoing interest items. So yeah, if you're a local in Vegas, you're probably going to be more concerned about, within 5 miles of your home, what's going on downtown, what's going on the Strip, what's the latest of this, who's at the Sphere, etc. If you're visiting Vegas, some of those things might be interesting, but then a whole collection of other things that locals almost pride themselves on not doing might come in handy. The Strip, who cares? I care. I'm visiting Vegas for a week and I want to know what's going on. So that's the idea, right? Because there will be subtle differences. So we start out assuming that. At the end of the day, they may be identical. I doubt it severely, but it could happen. The two sides. So while developing the MyMuni platform, we'll focus on co-creation with people around us full time. So people who are locals. In cases where we engage with locals in the greater Vegas area, welcome would be aimed at the almost 40 million, not quite 40 million this year. Maybe it could come together. Who knows? 40 million annual visitors coming to the greater Vegas area each year. Not sure if those are unique individuals or just visitors. It's hard to say, but a lot of people. It's a lot of people to engage with, and they're from a lot of places. We anticipated less focused collection of interests, and we could guess visitors are less likely to want to log in or use services that would be more than episodic. That is, rely on ongoing engagement. An episodic engagement would be, what's going on tonight? And then they may never visit the website again or the tools, the platform. I'm imagining mobile web, but we'll see. The MyMuni platform, the presumption is that people would tend to more often use the same sorts of pieces of information, the same applications, et cetera, et cetera. Ideally, the notion of providing services to visitors to a locality to make them feel, wait for it, welcome, is not unique to the greater Vegas area. We are not the only destination people flock to or even visit. As we all know, and in keeping with the general outreach to other open source developers looking to elevate their own localities, especially those civic volunteers, there is nothing in particular about the Welcome initiative that is Vegas specific. This is true of most, if not all, of our initiatives. So anyone interested in contributing to either or both, that's MyMuni or Welcome, should feel, wait for it again, welcome. Come on down. The interesting thing, though, is the interoperability. So building these in the Fediverse, that's sort of a hype use of these terms, but making use of the standards, right? So building these in the Fediverse, if you will, means assuming from the start that data and protocols will fit into that model. Activity Streams, Activity Pub, there's a couple of other ones, but Activity Streams and Activity Pub is sort of taken over. It works pretty well with caveats. Nothing is perfect. So we would make maximal use of Activity Streams and Activity Pub, and then a few classics like RSS and Atom. Those are for feeds, syndication feeds. RSS 2.0, really simple syndication. I can't remember what Atom stands for, but it's a variation on the same theme. And maybe a few others. Email. So let us not forget the existing open data sets. That's the other thing that kind of gets lost sometimes. Maintained here in Vegas that we can make use of and maybe even add to. And open data sets exist in other localities as well. Cities all across the country. If you visit a government website called data.gov, hopefully it's still there, it has a number of catalogs and pointers to where some of these pieces of data are stored. That was how Code for Vegas got its start 12 years ago, was working with the city of Las Vegas to build its open data set platform bolus pile of stuff. I may have mentioned this before. We intend to deploy a Mastodon server for Vegas as one way to share information at large, interoperating out of the box with the countless Mastodon servers around the world. And then with any other Activity Pub platform, I'm curious to see how well this really works as I explore some of those cross-platform interoperabilities. But generally, you can subscribe to other users, other accounts and whatnot across ActivityPub platform types. That's a good start, and we'll go from there. But also establishing one of the building blocks of an overall information sharing platform collection and notion of information sharing at city scale. It has been some time since I looked at how far along Instagram Threads is in their ActivityPub implementation. That was their big thing, was that Threads was going to join the Fediverse. But open protocols and data schema, so in this case, schema being the definition of the data structure, open protocols and data schema will rule the day to make interoperability a real thing that we can pursue, or pursue with everybody else. We can lean more towards open platforms anyway, and we will. Legacy interoperability comes from use of RSS 2.0, for example, and maybe a return to RDF site summaries. That's version 1.0. We'll see. Plain old HTML and rich web content making use of modern user interface ideas, and of course accessibility to enable interactions without visual or audio engagement. Non-trivial to be sure, but our reach should exceed our grasp. So in other words, we build the platform without requiring HTML and the inverted pyramid and headlines and all this. You can build that content, but you have data that you can also build other things. You can make use of it in different ways. So we start with the notion that we will be sharing information according to some available schema, so some standard data structures. We can subscribe, publish and subscribe, ActivityPub, in that standard way, and so the list goes on. So we can make the website view or even apps an element, but not the basis of this information sharing platform and approach. Policies and whatnot, that's the not so fun part. The really interesting and challenging parts will arise when it comes to what is allowed and what is not. Ideally, this is the sort of thing that can be discussed at locality scope rather than handing everything off to an external profit-driven entity or entities. This is one take. Ideally, we will attract views and ideas from a variety of people here locally in the greater Vegas area, and the entire policy notion should be adjustable for different localities. So if Pacoima wants to do something different, they are welcome to do so, and we would make that easy or easier to implement. So you don't have to say, oh, sorry, you got to do it this way. And we can enable ways to arrive at tools and methods that are actually useful and usable by the people who want to do those things. Localization and accessibility will be general challenges. Those are not snapping of the fingers, but with the huge number of visitors to the greater Vegas area and the substantial number of locations and cultures from which they originate, we have a lot of opportunity to adapt to language needs, cultural norms. That is much more difficult than language, by the way, and making what we do accessible to people who cannot see or hear or might have other limitations or special skills, superpowers. Fun fact, our websites, as I'm speaking right now, our websites for innovateforvegas.org and .foundation use a typeface, for most, if not all, text on the page. So all the content, the headlines, not as much, but the main body text on the page is using a font that was provided to Google for free, so we can use Google Fonts, and it's in there, that is designed to be easier to use for those with dyslexia. We've never really gotten feedback, whether it's good or bad, so that would be a step along the way. We're getting feedback and co-creating evolution of these efforts is a part of the plan. So if you build something for someone who has a different way of consuming these things than me or the developers that work on a thing, what you want to do is reach out to them and say, does this work for you? Are we on the right track? And that is important. And by having access to so many people visiting this place, if we can just touch 1% of them who are from different places and say, hey, does this work for you? Can we accept some feedback through the platform itself? Maybe interact with people in person now and then. This is how we make better stuff. Co-creation is a good idea, trust me. Ultimately, though, content moderation is always a challenge. Always. It is often called one of the hardest things to do. So why not do it? And so is age verification. That's going to be kind of fun. Keeping users safe and at the same time enabling participation. These are important things. So if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? Given the nature of the greater Vegas area, the real difference between being a local and a visitor, or the way we develop My Muni and Welcome for the Vegas area in particular, might be more interesting than we anticipate now, but discovery is part of the process. So we will see. Hey, that was quick. Excuse me. So yeah, that's the basic idea. And I should point out, this is all unscripted now. I did have my typical, I don't know if I have mentioned this. I create bulleted lists, groups of 3 with subheads with an overall, we can call it a script. It's kind of a mix of a script and then outline that I add to. But here we are done, and I'm going to keep talking. So one of the other things about our plans for MyMuni and Welcome, first of all, it will be a platform that we will ideally spin off in our labs approach so that we can make an actual profit generating platform. So our foundation continues to be powered by civic volunteers that make no money, myself included. There's no pay. It has to come from within. But when you work on things that are viable, I like to call our initiatives little mini startup possibilities. So if we can spin that off and turn it into a publishing platform or some service that we can offer to people in different localities and so on, it's been done, not a new business model. So we'll see if we can do an interesting thing that people would find worthwhile. It is also to be built on a few of the other initiatives we have, Smart Social, Open Data Capture Platform. I would really like Open Transit to integrate with this, and then Open Transit be useful in many cities, many localities around the country, maybe the world. I don't know. Do other parts of the world use GTFS? I do not know the answer to that question. That's the standard protobuf protocol that Google gave out for free for transit data. I think it's general transit file stream format, something. Doesn't matter. It used to be Google, now it's general. So if you ever look at all of our collection of initiatives, note that they are not getting a lot of attention lately. That's a different problem. But do also note that they could all fit together. How cool would that be? So like I said, Open Transit could fit into the mostly MyMuni, right? A lot of people who take the bus are commuting to work or to school, etc. But here in Vegas, a lot of visitors to Vegas like to take the bus, especially the Deuce, the double-decker bus that runs up and down the strip. So having easy access to information that it does not require, because here's the thing, if you live in the greater Vegas area, you've probably installed the 5 applications that you need to use our transit system. It might actually be 3, but I always say 5. If you're a visitor here, are you stopping and saying, oh wait, I gotta install Ride RTC? No, I guess I won't. I'll just pay cash when I get on the bus. Well, if you have the app, you can get the lower pass prices. And fun fact, don't tell anybody, stated policy, they never check your ID to see if you actually live here or if you're a visitor. So you can get the normal prices instead of the kiosk prices or on vehicle prices. There you go. That's the bonus you get for listening this far. Smart Social is the connection of data with people. So that would essentially be the underpinnings of the MyMuni and Welcome platforms. Open Data Capture would be about collecting more data to add to the cities and the region's open data sets. There's more. Search Party would be about missing people, pets, and property and trying to connect them, especially the people. That's the important part. What am I forgetting? There's more. It's already late. It's 11:22 already. Time flies. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we could be working on, and I'm hoping to gain some attention. Vegas is a culture of show me what you got, not, hey, I like the idea, let me join in early. Is there free food? Show me a demo, or I'm not interested, that kind of stuff. That's Vegas. Welcome to Vegas. So we'll see what we can come up with. But I'm personally interested and motivated by all of our initiatives. I think the MyMuni and Welcome pair are an actual viable spin-off business. So I'm interested in how we can make that happen so that people who do volunteer can see some value return later down the road. And then Open Transit, I just like because I am a consumer of public transit services, mass transit, if you like. And I know that there's a lot of room for improvement. And if we can co-create on that one, I think everybody wins. So anyway, that's the deal. A lot of decentralization, a lot of open source, a lot of enabling people to connect in standard ways using standard tools and methods and protocols and data structures. which enables people to build new things, but not come up with like, how am I going to share data between this and that? Oh, just use activity streams and ActivityPub. Oh, okay. What if you want to subscribe? It's already part of it. So you can have people subscribe and follow. And if you enable interoperable commenting, which is something I'm trying to see why that's not as easy as I think it should be. But if you can enable complete support for inter-platform posting or commenting or replying, so much the better. And again, I haven't really tried it lately, but Threads, I have used my Mastodon account to subscribe or follow my Threads account. I don't really use Threads, but I know that has worked. So we'll see where they are on that. But yeah, the idea would be to interoperate between cities and whatnot. And hey, if you're going to be visiting Vegas, you might as well have your, if you care to, have your preferences and whatnot stored in the welcome side. Or maybe you're like a virtual local. Maybe you are part of my Muni. Do you want to be? Okay, I'll leave it there. Total recording time, 33 minutes, 30 seconds, 35 seconds mark. I will save this. I will truncate silence. There's I think there's 11-second leader for capturing noise reduction sample data. So that gets chopped off. We'll truncate silence. I'm going to say 30 minutes. Thanks for listening as always. And we're looking forward to Hacktoberfest as I record this. In the future, it won't matter that I said Hacktoberfest because Hacktoberfest will have been in the past. But everything else we're doing is always in the future. How does that work? Take care. Catch you next week.